This is Bill Bullock, and can we talk some spiritual things for just a few moments on this Sabbath morning? This is the series Walking in the Light, Discovering the Secret Wisdom Encoded in Torah's Timeless Stories. I have a question to ask you to begin. Why are we so divided? How do we get so easily separated from each other? It's a question for us to ponder today. Why are we divided? How do divisions in the ranks of the redeemed, of the covenant community even happen? How can this be? What are the root causes of divisions in the ranks? And what are the steps in the progression from seed form and the root cause into the full-blown rebellions that we're going to see and are seeing in our day? What are the steps in the progression that we need to recognize along the way? How can we avoid opt out, or at least manage the negativity that comes out of these root causes and these steps in the progression? How can we keep the divisions that naturally occur in our ranks from time to time from derailing us from our mission, from ruining our family's destiny and bloodline calling? How can we avoid or at least manage these divisions in the ranks? Beloved, also, how can we, in cooperation with the Holy One and following the Torah and the guidance of Mashiach, how can we repair the damage that gets done by these divisions in the ranks? How can we fix it? How can we get on and get up and get beyond it and get on with the kingdom mission? These are the questions that come forth and are called into our attention by the 38th Parsha of Torah, Parsha Korach. And so we're going to talk about the paradox and a parable of the discontent in the ranks of the royal host. One of our number, you see, in our studies and our stories that we're reading, one of our number at Mount that was there with us at the Sea of Reeds, and all the way to Mount Sinai, and at Mount Sinai, and from Mount Sinai, one of our members, one of our very important members, Korach, the head of the clan of the Levites that actually is responsible for carrying the holy things of the tabernacle from place to place. One of our members, Korach, is quite the unhappy camper these days. He's going to be spreading discontent in the ranks of the royal host of the creator of the universe. These things should not be so, but how do they happen? In the covenant realm, him being an unhappy camper means, among other things, that despite all the Holy One has done for him and his family, he is not, at this moment at least, fearing God. He is not a God-fearing man at this moment in his life. But he is instead a vain man, a self-important man, a easily offended man, and a manipulative, narcissistic man at this moment in his life. This is how discontent in the ranks of the royal host began. He's not God-fearing, but he's instead vain and self-important and easily offended. It could happen to anyone, but it's going to happen because Torah is going to name names, and it's going to happen to Korach and to a few other gentlemen, Datan and Aviram and On, one of those being of the tribe of Reuben, the other two being of the tribe of Levi. So Korach and these other gentlemen are not God-fearing, but are vain, self-important, easily offended. They're also not Torah appreciative. They've lost connection to the Torah and the instruction manual of the creator of the universe for living a well-lived life. And they're thinking too much. They're in their heads. They're pseudo-intellectual. They're theological, theoretical. They're intellectual in all these ways, but they're not Torah appreciative. They are pseudo-intellectual and self-willed. They are not poor in spirit, as Mashiach would teach us to be, and blessedness comes from it. They were not poor in spirit, but they were thinking more highly than they ought of themselves, each other, and their ethnicity, and their tribe, and their clan, and their generation, and their gender, and their gifts. And this is telltale signs that division is brewing in the ranks, and the seeds are already sprouting. Not poor in spirit, but thinking more highly than they ought of themselves, of their ethnicity, of their tribe, of their clan, of their generation, of their gender, and of their gifts. Another factor that leads to this division in the ranks is that the ones whose names are being mentioned are not contrite. They're not so mournful over their own or their nation or their generation's shortcomings or their breaches of covenant that they committed, but instead they're quick to accuse and condemn as if they were holy and righteous in themselves. They even claim that for themselves. So this Parsha. What other factors contribute to the divisions in the ranks? These men were not humble and meek and gentle servants, but they were full of themselves, insistent on speaking their mind and their opinion, and lashon hara that goes with it, and critical judgments that go with it, and insisting that things be done their way as they thought was right in their own eyes, instead of as Torah said it should be done. And the reason they did that is because in their disconnection from the Holy One and His Torah, they believed they knew better than God Himself knew. They knew better than Moshe. They knew better than anyone else. And so the problem with all this, that they are not hungering and thirsting for righteousness, but instead they're wanting attention and wanting recognition and wanting influence and power over the community. They were not pure in heart, but they were hiding a darkly selfish agenda. They were not peacemakers. They were division sowers. They were not kingdom advancement focused, but they were obsessed with rights in the abstract, concepts in the theoretical realm, in the ivory tower realm, and form and substance is the last thing on their mind. It has to be according to a form and a dogma. This is the seeds. These are the seeds of division in the camp of the redeemed. Beware of them. Know them very well. The problem that we're going to find is that not only are these people discontent within the camp and following these patterns, the problem is that Korach and to some degree his fellows there we've mentioned are leaders of influential families and clans and tribes. And they're also, at least Korach is, a talented, very talented orator. He can make you believe his disinformation and misinformation. He can spin it in a way which you'll listen to it. Hear me, beloved, this is part of the problem. Whenever you have divisions in the camp, somebody listen to one of these talented orators who can make everything seem so right and so logical, even if all they were doing was sowing division. You see, misery loves company. If you want to know why there's division in the ranks of the redeemed, misery loves company. When miserable people start talking miserable talk, misery begins to seek out company among the miserable. So Korach is not just content to be unhappy and discontent himself. He wants to infect others with his rhetoric of irreverence, his rhetoric of division, his rhetoric of cause and right, his rhetoric of offense, his rhetoric of accusation, his rhetoric of discontent. He wants to accuse himself. It's like he said, to the streets, to the town square, to the halls of government, speak truth to power, if you define truth as you want to define it, and power as you desire to define it as well. But truth to power, assets to the streets, to the town square, to the halls of government, that is the exact opposite of kingdom light-bearing that we're called to do in the kingdom, in the covenant community. That is the way followed by the raging nations. They take to the streets. They go to the town square. They go to the halls of government. They speak what they think is truth to what they think is power. That's the way of the raging nations, and that's why the raging nations are constantly raging and constantly fomenting and constantly collapsing upon one another. We are called to something else. That's the way of the broad way, of the pathway of the broad way that leads to destruction. The way of the deceived minions who rush hither and thither to indulge and then slime other people with complaints and with offenses and with grudges and with vain imaginations. Well, Korach, in our studies, in our stories that we're going to be reading this week, Korach is about to cross a bright red line, and he's going to take a bunch of people with him. Now, why did they follow him? Why did they follow Korach? It says Korah took. That's how the parsha begins. Korah took. And some people allowed themselves to get taken. Why did they do it? Some people cross the red lines of the Torah because they follow the flesh, the urges, the appetites, the instincts, the hormonal rush, the cravings for attention, the fears of failure, fears of missing out, the flesh things, and its lust. Some people follow the Korahs of this world across the bright red line because of the flesh and its lust. Many more, like Detan and Abiram, it appears, follow after the pseudo-intellect, follow Korah because their pseudo-intellect is engaged by him. It is activated by them. The sense of folly, but nevertheless what they think is wisdom, it draws them. Slogans draw them. Bullet points draw them. This is what happens to people. It's not just happening in the Torah stories. It's a lesson, an object lesson for all of us to know what causes division in the ranks and what causes it to explode out of control. Still others, beyond the ones who follow the flesh and its lust, and the ones who follow the pseudo-intellect and its follow, still others follow the orators themselves and their personalities and the vanity that goes with that, the ones that trade and transact business in the currency of deception and vanity. Well, the crossing of the red line by Korah and his followers, by anyone in our day, the crossing of the red lines of the kingdom, of the covenant, will not end well. They will not end well for Korach in this week's parsha, or his wife, or his children. See, it's not just the persons involved themselves. It's their family members. It's their bloodlines. It's all with people within their spheres of influence. The crossing of the red line this week that we read about will not turn out well for the gullible minions who fall for the way of Korach and the language and the rhetoric of Korach and the theology and the philosophy and the ideology and the political theory of Korach. It won't bode well for them either. Those who buy into Korach's egalitarian propaganda and high-sounding but Torah-denying and therefore mission-endangering rhetoric will bear the price. Not because the Holy One is angry with them, because everyone bears the fruit of what they sow, the seeds that they sow. Well, that's how we will start our discussion of the 38th Parsha of Torah, the Parsha known as Korach. Welcome, beloved, to the season of the summer in the northern hemisphere, and in the land of Israel, and the land of Sinai, and the land of the deserts where we're passing through in our storytelling in Torah. Welcome to the summer season, the season of discontent, of disconnection, of disassociation, of dissension, and of dysfunction. That's where we are. I hope you recognize it. It's not just happening to Korah. It's happening to you and to me and our families and our communities. The 38th Parsha of Torah is Korach, and it is a Parsha of summer words and summer behavior. Hot, tense, difficultly angry. Here an outrage, there an outrage, everywhere an outrage. Here a scandal, there a scandal, everywhere a scandal. Here an offense, there an offense, everywhere an offense. That's the summer words, the summer behavior, the summer attitude. Tensions have been mounting for a while now. Tempers have flared. Accusations have flown. Lines have formed, and rumblings of social upheaval, if not civil war, have filled the air. It's been a long, hard summer already, and it's really just begun. But is the hard part over now? Can we come out of our safe rooms? And in the Torah situation of our Torah studies, can we come out of the tents and the desert? Can we come out back and enter back into the camp? Is it safe again in the camp, in the community? Or, heaven forbid, is the worst yet to come? Is the worst yet to come out of us? Is the worst yet to come out of others? Are we about to see horrible things that should not be in the camp of the redeemed, just because Korah took and people like him did the same? Let's set the scene of our Torah narrative. Numbers 16:1 through 18:32. I call this, and then another not so funny thing happened on the way to the promised land. We have left Sinai, we're in the desert marching towards the promised land, but we are still now, we know we're 40 years away. It's late summer, in the heat of the summer. It's Tammuz Av Elul, the middle part of the heat of the year. It's in the second year after the Exodus when our story is being told. In the aftermath of the sin of the spies, the Chet HaMeriglim, and the decree that we would all die in the desert, of this generation at least, and the subsequent war of presumption that failed so miserably. So it's a time of traumatic stress disorder in our camp. Everybody's discontent. The rumblings are going on. Yes, the seeds of division are being sowed. It's a great discontent time, happening in the wilderness of Zin, between Kadesh Barnea, where we had the sin of the spies, and Mount Hor, which is over our next stop. Parsha Korach. We're walking in the light of this Parsha this week. There are object lessons being given to us about how to avoid, how to manage, if we can't avoid, division in the ranks. How to know what the telltale signs of it are, how to know where the essential steps and required protocols of it are, and how to fix it when it breaks. Discovering the secret wisdom encoded in Torah's timeless stories. Let's stop for a moment. It's a very important lesson. And let's stop and let's give our thoughts to the Holy One, to his heavens. And let's do our call to worship and sing our Baraku, the blessing, before reading in the actual words of the scroll of the Torah. Baraku et Adonai Hamborak. Baruch Adonai Hamborak Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Amen. So be it. Selah. And now, would you open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are just strangers in this earth. Please do not hide your instructions for living from us. With the Baraku being sung, our discussion being introduced, now let us gather around, children of the Most High. It's story time again. The great storyteller is about to tell more of his testimonies. The testimonies. The stories that Torah tells are real-life parables. Critical teaching tools the Holy One has designed and placed into the Torah to help us understand the reasons for and the proper application and implementation of the mitzvot. King James Version of English Bibles call it commandments. These are the instructions for living, the manual of how to live life well upon earth. Every one of the stories that's selected for inclusion in the Torah was strategically placed in the narrative, in the context, usually right before or right after a big mitzvah download, after a set of instructions are given. Usually a download like this has a long episode of free-flowing divine speech, and we've seen that, and now we're going to have a story told to us. Now the question always becomes, what are the instructions, what are the mitzvot that the story of Korach's rebellion in this case highlights and illustrates? What should we learn? What should we take? What should be our example or our model? And to understand those things, you have to consider the context of every story, particularly the story of Korah and his followers. Korah constitutes part of the wilderness testing unit of portions. It's designed to reveal the sowing and reaping consequences of life and its bad choices. We made bad choices in the wilderness, and we're going to get specific about bad choices this week with Korah and his followers. So this is all about learning to understand and see the application of the law of sowing and reaping. Whenever we indulge in flesh distractions, whenever we get negative of thought and opinion and allow those negative thoughts and opinions to control our minds and our speech, whenever we get attitudinal predispositions toward negativity and anger and offense, whenever we get self-centered in our complaints about fleshly or pseudo-intellectual things or governments or rulings, whenever we get self-righteous in our criticisms and don't see our fault, only the fault of others. Whenever we get self-promoting in our accusations, we selectively choose who we will accuse of what and with what level of passion and fire we'll throw into it. Whenever we adopt antisocial behaviors to interrupt the flow of the camp, whenever that happens, then we have wilderness disease setting in. And that's where we are in Torah right now. 3 weeks into the unit that I call the hard lessons of the wilderness testing. Our calling, beloved, our dear friends and family, our calling as the Holy One's great nation, its Goy Kadosh, its holy nation, requires us to know from personal and collective experience the psycho-spiritual targeting that happens to us in summertime, in times of tension and stress, in times whenever there's brooding division in the camp. We need to know what are the expected trials and temptations and frustrations we will undergo, and what are the serpentine deceptions that are used by the adversary in those seasons, and by human beings who are under the influence of the adversary in those seasons. We need to know what makes the nations rage and peoples imagine a vain thing. We need to know what causes the ethnicities and the collective groups of the world to separate and divide up and get angry at one another and delight in perversion and fixate on folly and wallow in vanity and destroy the unity of the camp and of the world. So to get the context, we get the concluding subject of Parsha Shalach was, for us, Tzitzit, the flowering fringes on the corners of our garments. The Holy One knows that as bad as the mistakes we will make, He will give us an antidote. He will give us something to keep our mind on. He will give us the tzitzit to look at, to remember all the instructions of the Holy One. How let aside all the opinions of men and the anger and the offenses between races and ethnicities. He will put aside all that, says, but you're bound together by the fringes. The fringes remind you of why you're on earth at such a time as this, and what the greater collective mission is that overrides any of the differences you may experience or feel with other people. The fringes. That's where we ended last week's Parsha. The Holy One said to Bnei Israel, you're to make and shape for yourselves tassels, artistic fringes on the wings, the extremities, the corners of your garments. Do this throughout all your generations, to put on this artistic fringes of the wings, on the wings of their garments, as a ribbon of blue to start with. And these will be to you as fringes. And when you see them, you will remember and call to mind all the Holy One's instructions for living. And you are will to make them into a real lifestyle. And you will not go around touring, being voyeurs, looking after the things that your natural physical heart wants or your eyes tend to fixate upon, because most of that's going to be the evil or the things that are not what you want to see in the world. And then that's the way the Parsha ended last week. Now, opening lines of Parsha Korach. Vayikach Korach. And then Korach took. He became a taker. He was not a giver to the community. He was a taker he wanted to take what? Take V'yakach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahat ben Levi. Then Korach, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kahat, the son of Levi, he took what? He took Datan, the Aviram, Eliav. He took Dathan, he took Aviram, and he took these sons of Eliab, who are of the tribe of Levi. And he took On ben Pelet, the son of Pelet of the tribe of Reuben. So Korach is taking people. They are allowing themselves to be taken. And the parsha continues. V'akumu lifnei Moshe, and they rose up against Moshe. Ve'anashim mipnei bnei Israel, and they became men who were they brought themselves out of bnei Israel. They differentiated themselves from bnei Israel. Kamishim humatayim nisei ada, and 250 men of rank, princes of the witness throng, Ke'i Moed Anshe Shem, men of influence and men of reputation from the assembly, Vakahalu, and they staged a protest gathering. Al Moshe Ve'al Aharon, and it stood in opposition to Moshe and to Aharon. This is trouble in River City. This is trouble in the camp. 250 men plus Korach and Datan and Abiram and On. Ve'omrud Elehem Rav Lachem, and they said to Moshe and Aaron, you take too much upon yourself. You are too much. Rav Lachem, this became their slogan, their chanted slogan. Every protest movement, every movement of discontents, malcontents always has a nasty accusatory slogan. Here it is. Rav Lachem is the Hebrew, and you are too much. You think you're too much. You've done too much. You've gone too far. Kikol ha-eda kulam v'kedushim. And all the congregation, all the assembly, all the called ones, the witness strong is holy, they say. Every one of them, see the egalitarian language, the high-sounding rhetoric, but is not from the Torah. Uv tokam Adonai, and the Holy One is among them all. Umadu tinasu al kahal Adonai. Why then, talking to Moshe and Aaron, these Datan, Abiram, and On, and also Korach are saying, why then do you, Moshe and Aaron, exalt yourselves above the assembly, above the congregation, above the called out ones? That's the message. Wow. The only problem is Moshe and Aaron had never set themselves up. It's all lies. It's all fantasy. It's all vain imaginations. It's all false accusations. But it sounds so right in the moment. And people, minions, listen to the nonsense and take the spin and believe it because they said it with such passion. Here we are. After the report of the spies, we're still believing this kind of nonsense. After all the congregation made the mistake of listening to the twin spies, so we're doing it again, the two spies, this time being our four spies, being Korach, Datan, Abiram, and On. Well, say hello to the kind of a leader to which the discontented multitudes always tend to flock. Someone who's got a loud voice with a loud complaint. Discover the folly that makes the nations rage. That's what makes the nations rage, a voice of discontent spoken with passion and fire and misinformation and false accusation that sounds so good at the moment. Well, we're going to learn a few lessons about the division within the ranks of the redeemed. We'll learn about the steps of connection slippage, where we begin to slip away from our connection with the Holy One and from our fellow brethren as we do. We'll learn about the second step. This is Sinat Hinam, development of this, it's called baseless hatred, this passionate dislike. We'll talk more about Sinat Hinam. So we have the first step is connection slippage, the second step is Sinat Hinam, and the third step is the resulting unraveling of social fabric, every man, every movement for itself. Denominations, assemblies that set up against and counter against each other. That's the way of the division within the camp. The events of this week's Parsha that we'll draw our lessons from starts with the introduction to special interest demagoguery and propaganda, the takers of this world that get out there in front of a camera in our day, or in front of a microphone, or on a public stage somewhere, and they start taking people's emotions, taking people's money, taking people's attitudes, taking people's peace, taking people's simcha, their joy, taking those things and turning them into a weapon. That's what Korach did, and that's what the demagogues and propagandists today do. Oh, don't let it happen to you, beloved. Don't let a negative message become your main message. This is what he did. So the many allowed themselves to be taken, owned, influenced by Korach. Korach had mindcraft tools that he used, stratagems, truisms that he would speak, ad hominem attacks that he knew would stir up the emotions in the people. That's what he would do. That's his techniques. That's his tactics. It's always the same in every propaganda campaign that you'll see in any place, in any situation, in any organization, any group in the world. And the next part of our parsha will be how Moshe responds whenever they come at him like this, with these false accusations and this division in the camp sowing. Moshe will fall on his face, and then he will make a proposal. Did he get the proposal from the Holy One? Did he make it up on the spot? Was he angry? We will have to learn the only right way to do this is to do what the Holy One says to do. Whether that happened in this case is really not our concern. You can choose to believe either way you want to about that. The key factor is in our day, in situations where we're faced with someone who wants to cause division in the camp or is causing division among the redeemed, how will we respond? Will we do anything without asking the Holy One and seeking his counsel and getting his counsel before we act? Well, Moshe will respond by making a proposal. Let's have a trial by ordeal. Everybody grab a censer. All you 250 princes that have come up against me with Korach, y'all grab a censer, each one of you, and come toward the tabernacle, come toward the altar, and let's see who is considered holy by the Holy One, who will live and who will die. I'm not sure that's exactly the best way, but that's what was done in this situation, and it's a dangerous precedent to urge. Well, the next thing's going to happen is that Datan and Aviram are going to speak on their own. They're not going to just follow Korach. They're going to have their own negativity to speak. They're going to talk about wanting to go back to Egypt and about how they've been offended. They don't like where they are, what Moshe's done. And then we're going to see that the Holy One will intervene and the earth will open and Korach and his family will be sucked into the earth alive, go down into the depths of Sheol alive. This is a fascinating statement. I don't have time to discuss it and break it down for you. Maybe you can talk about what that means to go down alive into Sheol, into the depths of the earth in that regard in your conversations when you have them together. But in this situation, we have another event that takes place like Nadab and Abihu getting the censers. So it happens with the 250, and the same basic result. They're consumed by fire. That's another story. 250. Now, Korach and his family have gone alive into the depths of Sheol. 250 have been consumed by fire. Then Eleazar is told by the Holy One, and he applies to make a ceremonial cover. It's a wrong word. To make this reminder, remembrance cover on the altar, the brazen altar of all these different censers. And then we're going to have what's going to break out in the camp as a plague. A strike, 14,700 or so men will die. It was just so poisonous, so toxic in the camp that the law of sowing and reaping effects, and they were going to die anyway. Now they began to die alone. Now Aaron steps forward, the maligned one, the one who was accused of all these things. He steps forward and he begins to intercede. And he causes the cycle of negativity to stop. The forgiveness aspect of stepping forward, the idea of willingness to bear any cost on behalf of his brethren, even those who are accusing him, that steps forth. And that's how you fix this whole process, forgiveness, not war. And so the next thing is that we have this demonstration of who really is a leader, who really is one who you can listen to and be taken up into by his words. And you see it's going to be someone like Aaron. Aaron, the trial of Aaron's rod versus the leaders of the other tribes. Aaron's rod buds and leaves and fruits and turns into a living thing. And by their fruit you shall know them, Mashiach said. And then we'll see that at the end of the Parsha, after the fixing by Aaron's prayer and blessing and intercession, after the object lesson of how you know what a true leader is, you learn by their fruit and what they accomplish and how they fix things, then you'll see that there is a reconciliation that can be had. There can always be a reconciliation as long as you don't destroy the possibilities for it. And Aaron and the Levitical priesthood, the people from the very tribe that rebelled, the tribe of Levi, that rebelled against his own, and Levi against his own, and Aaron and Moshe are going to be reconciled together. And you see them working together harmoniously, each one with its own avodah, an area of responsibility, and each one supportive of each other and all the other tribes. That's what we'll see. Well, division in the ranks, a separation, a schism phenomenon. One that evidences the prioritization of self and subgroup interests, special interests, and vanity over shared calling and mission. And you see, we have so much more in common than we have that is not in common. We got so obsessed, I'm afraid, even in the community of the Redeemed, but definitely in the raging nations, with what we have that separates us and divides us. But the Holy One says, no, focus on what joins you, what bonds you together. Otherwise, you will always be like the raging nations and become a house divided. Why do the nations rise and fall? Because they become a house divided, and they collapse upon each other because of division in the ranks. The toxic fragmenting of a society. That's what division in the ranks brings about, the toxic fragmenting of a society into different opposing camps, cabals, and classes. Well, Moshe's response to the approach and the speaking truth to power game that was being played by Korach, Dathan, and Abiram, and on, he falls on his face and he proposed to let the Holy One decide what to do. We know what's taken place there. We see the result. All those things have taken place. But the question really becomes, what is toxic fragmenting? And how do you recognize it? It's another word, toxic fragmenting is another word I call for connection slippage. This is where it all starts. This is the root cause of division in the ranks, connection slippage. Now, when a group of unhappy campers within a society would be just fine with the surface of the earth opening up and swallowing another group, or fire falling from heaven and devouring them, whenever one group of unhappy campers within a society would be just fine with that happening to some other group among them and taking them down to Sheol alive, or burning them alive in the desert sands, when that happens, we have connection slippage. Connection to the Holy One, connection to fellow man, connection to who we are and why we're here. That is not who we are. That's not the way we're supposed to model excellence to the nations. So, whenever this sort of connection slippage happens, it runs rampant through the people. It does it in the raging nations. It will do it to us. Our families, our communities can be affected negatively by this, and are regularly. We have, and we should have at least something that the nations, the raging nations, don't have. We should have an antidote for this. We should have a plan and a protocol to avoid this, and we need to follow, and are supposed to follow, a more excellent way. Well, we're in 7 weeks of tribulation now. We've started 2 weeks ago. We're in the 3rd week. They're in this connection slippage, and we have joint inflammation. Where we come together, it's like a joint or a shoulder. All of our joints get inflamed. Where we come together, we don't like it. It feels uncomfortable where we come together. And that happens when we talk about our connection to the Holy One and the holy kadosh things of his realm, the tabernacle, the Torah, all the furnishings of the tabernacle, all the things of the Torah, all these things, the Sabbath, all these things are so important and they're so holy, and we get disconnected from them because we're thinking about something else. We're obsessed about some offense, some event, some scandal. Well, we get disconnected from the Holy One and his holy things, and as a result, we also get disconnected from one another and our mission. The second phase after connection slippage is the unraveling of social fabric and the loss of the sense of our shared calling and mission. Do you even know what we have in common? Do you remember what we have in common and how important that is? What the world is waiting for? The earth is groaning in eager expectation. All creation is groaning in eager expectation for the sons of God to be revealed for who they are, not for their divisions and separations between them. Well, what happens is after the connection slippage, we unravel our social fabric and we lose our sense of shared calling and mission. Don't let it happen, beloved. The third thing that happens after unraveling of the social fabric, we begin to take up offenses of other people and old offenses of our previous generations and previous people connected to our race or our group collective. And we take up offenses and we break into rival camps. And we begin to spew toxic, divisive rhetoric and be taken by those who do. And that is the end result of, results in sinat, hinam. Now, Let's talk about connection slippage for a few moments, and we'll talk about sinat hinam for a few moments, because these are the telltale signs of the budding, brooding division in the camp. The connection slippage from the Holy One and His holy things. Now, the first thing that we should always understand is that our one thing we should all share together, the common thing that binds us together above all things, is God consciousness and awareness. Because of the things that have happened in our lives, because of our connection by covenant with the Holy One, we have a God consciousness that the nations do not have. Yirat Adonai, fear of the Holy One, or appreciation of the Holy One, that is like in the Garden of Eden. We have capacity to that. That's what draws us together. It is the beginning point of wisdom. Fear of the Holy One is the beginning of wisdom. It is the essential key to focused and well-lived lives, and of living in community and being supportive of one another, of health, of peace, of fruitfulness, and of both tikkun nefesh, the healing of individual souls, and tikkun olam, the healing of the universe, the creation world, and bring it back to its normal, to its intended state of beauty, fruitfulness, and shalom. These things are our delight and our essential purpose, and they are all of us. They belong to all of us, not to one. These things are what holds us together. And then there's what I call the 7-point hitch. On a tractor or a piece of equipment you may use, they hitch the power source to the implement that they want to use. And so they do what's called a 3-point hitch. But I want to talk to you about the spiritual realm. And the spiritual realm, the connection between the Holy One and us is a 7-point hitch, a 7-point interface. The first one is the covenant itself. Exactly the words of covenant, the covenant made with our ancestors, with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, specifically starting and defining in Genesis 12, 15, 18, and other places, 22, 24, and Exodus 19 and 20. These is our eternal covenant of witness with the Holy One. This is point 1 of our 7 points of interface with the kingdom. This is what keeps us connected. And we start losing connection, we begin to lose our focus upon the covenant. We think about our own personal salvation, our own personal sanctification, our own personal desires, or wish list of prayer. We think about our own selves as opposed to being a part of an eternal covenant flowing out of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and Joseph. Second of the 7-point hitch is an encounter-rich DNA memory. We have had encounters. In our DNA, in our family lines, we have had encounters with the Creator of the universe. We have the covenant, but we have individual upkeep and overwatch encounters from Him from time to time. And that leads us to awareness that He is always with us. And we are blessed and motivated together by the chesed to our forefathers, our avot. The covenant faithfulness of the Holy One to Avraham, the covenant faithfulness of the Holy One to Yitzhak, the covenant faithfulness the Holy One showed to Yaakov and to our progeny, Moshe, and all the people of Israel. We also have the third point of the 7-point hitch is Shabbat, the Sabbath. The Sabbath is given to us to recenter us and recalibrate us and realign us and point us back to where we're supposed to be, the connection. If we ever let any of these things get lax or slack or forget them, we lose our connection. We become disconnected. We have connection slippage. The fourth of the 7-point hitch is the snow globe imagery for meditation. It gives us so many things to look at, so many people, so many images from the tabernacle to look at. It also gives us the protocols. So the 5th point of the 7-point hitch is the Mishkan courtiership, the tefillim, the prayers, the tehillim, the praise, the kippurim, the coverings, the state of well-being that He can impose upon us, impart to us from heaven. These all lead to ground us in love of the Holy One and love of neighbor. And then the 6th point of the 7-point hitch is the Torah itself. Every mitzvah, every instruction that He gives with the divine speech, or every story that He tells that gives an object lesson in His testimonies, is a ray of His divine light that gives us energy, inspiration, hope, and direction. And 7th, the 7-point hitch, the final point of the 7-point hitch is Mashiach, the hope of Mashiach, the understanding of Mashiach, and the guidance of Him as a rabbi, as a model, as a mentor, and a teacher. All the 7 points of interface, the 7-point hitch. So If we lose connection with these 7-point hitch items, or the Yirat Adonai, fear of the Holy One, connection, if we lose these things, what happens? Well, the first thing that happens is that we begin to lose connection with the face and the presence. Remember, may the light of his countenance be upon you, the blessing of the ironic blessing, the light of his countenance, that may he lift up his face upon you. We lose the connection with his face and the radiating Kedusha energy that draws us like a moth to flame. We lose connection with the spirit within us crying out, Abba, Father. We lose the face in his presence, or our connection to it. It begins to be a faint memory at best, and sometimes not even that. We also lose his voice, the sound of the sweetness of the voice of the creator of the universe, the true tone of heaven. We lose that true tone, and we get confused with men's voices and ideologies and movements and chants and slogans and bullet points of politics. We confuse all that because we've lost our connection to the true tone of heaven. Well, the third thing we lose and disconnect from is his vision, the Creator's own vision, his beautiful vision of how the world is supposed to be, how excellence is supposed to look like in us, and what man is supposed to do, what we in the covenant are supposed to do to bring about that excellence and model it to the world. We lose connection also with the majesty, the beauty, the weight of glory, the goodness, all the goodness of the Holy One. We lose focus on that. We start thinking about how evil the world is, or the people we know are, or how some leader is mistaking, doing something wrong, or how politics aren't going the way we want. We focus on that instead of the majesty and the beauty and the goodness and the weight of glory of the Holy One. The fifth thing that we disconnect from is his goodwill, his desire to see good things happen to men and nations and the earth, his desire to bring a reconciliation between God and man. We lose that. We become critical and judgmental. Oh, don't let it not be. Let it not be. The sixth thing is we lose connection with his plan, his grand plan for the redemption of mankind as a species, bloodline by bloodline, household by household, individual by individual, as many as will come to the sound of his voice, that plan for the restoration of creation as an ecosystem to its original intended state of beauty, fruitfulness, shalom, and harmonious interaction. We lose connection with that. We start thinking about little details about things we don't like. We lose connection with this grand strategy of the King and the guidance, overwatch that he provides. And seventh, we lose his love. We lose the sense of being within, enveloped in, and exuding his love and his discipline as a father disciplines a child. And when we do that, when we lose these 7 points of connection, we become easy marks for panhandlers like Korach, panhandlers of negativity, of philosophy, of ideology, of political theory, of pseudo-intellectual religiosity, of hate, of anger, of offense, of division. We become easy marks for the panhandlers. We lose connection with the one another's also. Not just we lose connection with the Holy One and his mission, we lose connection with our sense of interaction and interrelationship with each other. The one another's of Scripture. We forget and we lose contact with being able to love one another, as the Torah and the New Testament even says, of being kind to and encouraging one another, of bearing with and forgiving one another, of sharing burdens with one another, of honoring one another, of esteeming one another, of preferring and praying for one another, of greeting and comforting one another, of showing hospitality to one another, of living in harmony with one another and doing what's necessary to keep that harmony, of behaving humbly toward one another, of submitting one to another, of judging not one another, of envying not one another. And the list goes on and on. The one another's of Scripture are forgotten to us when we have connection slippage. And if we in the covenant community have connection slippage, and we do not love and serve and honor and prefer and pray for one another, how then are we able to model the excellent way to the raging nations? How are we any different from the raging nations? If, when we see flaws or failings or weaknesses in our brethren, we do not keep our rebukes internal and brotherly and private and gentle and kind, how then are we providing any better model of the kingdom of heaven to the world than Cain, the brother of Hebel, did in his blood-soaked field, or then did Ham, the father of Canaan, as he did upon his exit from Noah's tent? How are we any better than they? How are we showing the king's ways in any way? Well, the symptoms of disconnection are a breakdown in communication, a change for the negative in the frequency, high-pitched, the tone, and the content of communications. They are a unwillingness to consider the other person's point of view or feelings. They are unresolved conflicts, wounds, scars, grudges, betrayal, feelings of betrayal and victimization, abandonment, trust issues, guardedness. These are the symptoms of disconnection from one another, our one another's. Well, I want to go on now. I want to get down to the issue of Sinat Hinam. This is a very important subject because this is where disconnection syndrome ends. Sinat Hinam. Traditionally, as I said, it's been interpreted as baseless hatred. And it's as we enter this season of the year when we focus on the destruction of the temple, the fall of Jerusalem between 17 Tammuz, which is 2 weeks and a couple days ahead for us, and the 9th of Av, which is 3 weeks later than that. As we get into this season when Jerusalem is under siege in the historical time period, and the temple is about to fall, and the nation is about to be carried off into captivity, that's the season we remember this time of year. Baseless hatred, it doesn't really fill the bill as far as a definition of Sinat Hinam. Sinat Hinam is what we all believe destroyed, caused the nation to be destroyed, the temple to be lost, and the captivity to begin. Sinat Hinam in us, not in the world, but in us. Traditionally, baseless hatred, but literally it means rejection of grace and favor for other people. When you refuse to seek and allow and believe and trust for grace given to the other person and only for yourself. And when you want instead fire to fall or the earth to open on other people, then you see you've lost the connection with each other and you've got the disease of Sinat Hinam. My definition of Sinat Hinam, the Rabbi's son's definition, would be arrogant rejection of the love and grace protocols of Torah and of 1 Corinthians 13 as well. Leviticus 19, 13 through 19, 1 Corinthians 13, all laid out these beautiful love and grace protocols of how we're supposed to be with one another. And Sinat Hinam means to reject those standards of grace and love and choose instead offense, anger, and malice. Well, in a situation of Sinat Hinam, no one respects or honors anyone else. A pandemic occurs of arrogance, of judgmentalism, of self-righteous outrage. Oh, you hear it so much in the raging nations in the world. Why would you ever want to think you should hear it in the community of the redeemed? Fearmongers spread horror stories. Hate mongers spread hate. Divisive people with divisive rhetoric sow division. Mockers mock. Haters hate. Beloved, it should not be so. Sinat Hinam is a narcissistic cancer that we must not allow to take over our communities, our families, or our own hearts. As it was in the days of Noah, so it is in days of Sinat Hinam. Emotionally charged disinformation and misinformation pour forth like sewage into our communities, into our own tables and our own forums. Profane rants take over the dialogue. Threats of violence get voiced and spoken as if it was righteous to do so. Acrimonious rhetoric begins to put everybody on the cusp of outrage at all times and the brink of rampage at all times. Ranting is even celebrated as virtuous. They deserve what we're saying to them. We need to say it because the world needs to hear it. That's a negative concept. Violence is even justified as resistance. Outraged people shout vile slogans and repeat mantras through clenched teeth. Sinat Hinam is the root cause of division in the camp, and division in the camp is the root cause of our failure of mission. Well, beloved, my time with you for the day is over. I will go next door. We'll have a meeting, a conversation, a discussion of the spiritual things of the Torah, and particularly of Parsha Korach with my friends and family next door. Meanwhile, as I leave you, I want to bid you shalom and farewell. I want to ask you to if you want more information about Parsha Korach or any of the Parshas of Torah or about these spiritual things we're talking about, then you're welcome to go for free on the biblicallifestyle.org website, biblicallifestyle.org. Go to the Rabbi's Son page on that website. On one of the pages on that page is a archive section, and all the studies from all the parshas, every parsha, are given to you there for free. You can access them by links, and particularly there are 6 for Parsha Korach, and I encourage you, if you want more information to read, more to talk about in your meetings together or your discussions in your communities, then go back and look at that. If while you're there you have a chance and you're led to by the Spirit of the living God, hit the donate button and help us fund this process, this gift to the community that we're giving. Until next time, Shabbat Shalom. I'll see you next week.